Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another brand new edition of Silver Goose Farm Stories. My name is Jamie Silva. I will be your host for this episode, I suppose, and I'm joined today, not in the studio, by the creator and normal host of the podcast, Maria Silva, aka Mama Goose. Maria, how are you this evening?
Pretty good. How are you, Jamie?
I'm doing very well. So folks, tonight we've got a very cool, very porcine program for you. And the first item on that program is answering the question, what does porcine mean?
I think it's anything of or relating to pigs.
Yes, that is the word. And the reason is because this episode is all about pigs and the Silver Goose Farm pigs in particular. And the way we're going to get into this is a little segment that I've decided to call, What Were You Thinking? And in this segment, we will discuss some enterprise, endeavor, or decision made on the farm and basically ask Maria how it came to be. What were the reasons behind it, the logic? In short, what were she and Hank thinking? To the question, Maria, you and Hank are raising several pigs. I'm not sure how many. Why don't you tell us, how did this get started? How did it begin? And of course, what were you thinking?
Well, for pigs, essentially, we weren't really thinking. We had no plan. They were the first animals that we ever got on the farm that weren't like our dogs and cats. We have this kennel on our property when we moved in, and it was just sort of sitting empty and overgrown with weeds. And I turned to Hank and I said, we have to use this property, like this space for something, because it's a very nice fenced in area. And so that day, he found an ad on Craigslist for pigs, and he said, let's get pigs. And I said, sure, because that's what I say. And
So the space from, look, there's a kennel, to, I have purchased some pigs, was like several hours?
yeah, maybe not even several hours.
Wow.
He's on Craigslist a lot. Well, because you have to get those deals really quick. I think your dad was there at the time of this discussion. So Hank sees the ad on Craigslist and he said, well, what do you think about piglets? And then your dad, who loves raising pigs, was like, oh yeah, pigs are great.
Definitely.
You could do it.
We'll say no more.
Right. Well, between the three of us, he was the only person that had like actual experience raising pigs.
Uh-huh.
And he said it was easy, it was super simple, and he had all the equipment that he wasn't using and he was going to give it to us. So I know. So it was like a no-brainer. Like, sure, let's have pigs.
Definitely. So then you got the pigs, and I'm guessing you found it simple and easy and straightforward from the beginning. Or is that not true?
When they're small, it's pretty simple. You know, we sort of made this little like bed of hay for them, and they had food and water, and they got into their pen, and they were super cute and happy to be on like in the grassy area. And that lasted for like 2 weeks because the variety that we got, which was it's a commercial grade meat pig, they grow really quickly. They go from, like the size of a little puppy to a massive 300, 400 pound animal within 6 months. So,
wow.
So very quickly they outgrew the kennel space, and we kind of weren't prepared for the rate of growth and the infrastructure with which to contain them, because we didn't. So commercially, the kennel space was actually just fine. A commercial raised pork is confined to a very small space and doesn't move for the entirety of its life, which is really, inhumane and awful. But we didn't want to raise our pigs that way. So we thankfully had all these like bunk bed frames and old fence paneling that I've mentioned a lot. And we threw together this little pen on our like the grassy pastures in our property and kind of put them there. And for a while it worked out really well. But then winter came, because we got them sort of in the middle of the end of summer. And it was the year that the drought ended. So we had torrential rainstorms and frost and hail, and pigs are pretty stout and hardy animals. They can handle wind, and they can handle cold, and they can handle wet, but they can't handle the combination of all three. So we were constantly moving them, trying to keep them dry, like putting out bales of hay for them to sleep in. So the first year was a lot of lessons learned, but thankfully they were happy for the most part.
Mm-hmm. What do the pigs eat? My impression is they're right up there with goats in terms of will consume most things. Is that true?
Well, actually, goats are far pickier than pigs. Pigs will eat anything. We put a mattress down, like an old mattress we had, and thought like, oh, they'll sit here on this bed, and it'll keep them off the mud. And the pig ate the mattress. We came back and there were only springs left.
Down to the bones.
Right.
Wow. That they also sound hungry.
They're constantly hungry. I mean, that's
we right get there a lot in the name.
We get a lot of pig phrases from like the way they live their life.
You don't really need to throw away any sort of food leavings or slops at all.
Right. Between the pigs and the chickens, which are essentially pigs with wings, we and the compost pile, we don't have any organic waste at our house. Like all the slops gets divided up between the birds and the mammals, and and they eat everything.
And you have an arrangement with like a local grocer of some kind? Like you have more pig food than one would expect.
Yeah, we're really lucky that we live in an area where there's lots of other farms, and there's actually like a local produce delivery, which is a farm, and they sell their extra produce that they can't sell in market or has gone bad to people, and so we get like a week's worth of fruits and vegetables for our pigs for like $15. It's like 150 to 200 pounds of produce that they can eat. It's pretty great.
Just wave away the flies and it'll be fine. There's actually
sometimes that's really great quality.
Yeah,
it's like an apple that has like a little bruise on it, or an orange that's got a nick and that can't be on like a market shelf.
The food that's sold in the stores, I mean, it basically has to win a beauty contest.
Yes, it has to look perfect. But I mean, so cosmetically, I don't know. Sometimes I look at I pulled a tangerine today and it was perfect, except for, I think it was on the small side.
The first winter you had the torrential downpour. But of course, it is not rainy all the time at your house. It is actually very, very hot. And so can you talk about the challenges of keeping pigs hydrated in the summer months? And please, if you can, along the way, share a fun farm science fact about pigs.
Yes. Well, a pig is happy as long as it has access to food and water. I mean, most animals are happy if they have that, but pigs especially, because they don't have sweat glands. And so in order to cool down, they make themselves a wallow and they kind of roll around in the mud, and that's how they stay cool. And it also, they coat their skins with mud so that the flies don't sit on them, and it protects their really delicate skin actually from getting sunburned, especially like the lighter colored ones. They'll turn bright red in the sun if they're out too long.
And am I to understand that you're not out there in the morning rubbing them with pig sunscreen?
No.
To keep them protected?
No, but we do, because we have months, June, July, August, September. It's not unheard of to have weeks of 90 degrees, 100 degrees, 110 degree days. And so on those days, we definitely go out a couple of times in the day to make sure their water levels are good. And also I'd like to flush out their water and to give them a nice hearty wallow, and then to kind of spray them down so that they don't get overheated.
What is a wallow?
A wallow is a big muddy pit that a pig will dig out for themselves. So in the wild, they kind of like to get under rooted shady area and root around and dig a nice big hole for them. If they're close to water, they like to dig down until they get nice and muddy. Our pigs, they will go to their water feeder, which is sort of like an on-demand kind of giant hamster water feeder for pigs, and they'll hold down the nozzle until it makes this giant puddle, and then they just roll around in it and super happy.
Yes, I think that's a great description. And I pulled up the technical definition here as well. Definition 2 of a person: indulge in an unrestrained way in something that creates a pleasurable sensation.
Well, that's very pig-like. Pigs live completely in the moment.
Absolutely. Pigs are present.
Yes. That's a good t-shirt.
Well, you have an online store.
I know.
You can make merch.
Sell merchandise.
What a great one to start out on. And they have a little drawing of a pig underneath wallowing.
Oh, there you go.
And it's just fully in the moment. Okay. That's really good. So while the pigs are with us, and we'll get to when they're not in a bit, there are other farm benefits. You've talked about how they eat the leftover food. Mm-hmm. What other things can they do for your farm?
Well, everyone says the only good reason to have a pig is because they're good eating and there aren't any other purposes for them. But I would very much disagree. Like a pig's natural behavior during the day when they're not eating or sleeping is to root. They have this like stub nose that we're familiar with, but it's actually a very like tough cartilage. And so they kind of use it like a trowel, and they put their nose to the ground and they just dig and dig and dig and dig, which if you don't want them to, they'll turn your farm into a moonscape. But if you are good at keeping them moving on different parts of the pasture, they're really good at aerating the ground.
At wetting the ground?
Like just like aerating, like on a golf course where people walk around with like the shoes with the spikes in it to like kind of puncture the grass and let the ground breathe.
Yes, to be clear, Maria, I know what aerating is.
Oh, okay.
I'm here for the listeners.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So they help like turn over soil. They're natural tilling machines. So one thing that I did like before I planted my corn patch was like I set 2 pigs on it and like a little fenced in area. They dug it up in a day and I moved them off, and I didn't have to, break too much of a sweat to get the ground prepped to put my seeds in. They're also really good if you have people use them to clear out like super wooded foresty areas, because they go in and they chew on everything and their bodies just sort of push everything over. So like you have an overgrown woods or creekside or something like that, you can just release pigs in it and they will clear it out for you pretty efficiently.
Wow. Release the pigs.
Yeah.
And then can you also take them truffle hunting, or is that a different type of pig?
It's a different type of pig. Not our pigs, but there are types of pigs where you can train to find mushrooms. They're always digging and chewing on stuff, so I'm sure they're finding something.
You mentioned earlier that you initially had the commercial type of pigs that grow super fast. You switched from that type of pig.
Yes.
To what did you switch to, and why?
So from our earlier pig experience, we went from a Berkshire Yorkshire breed, which is your commercial grade pig.
Those are such sophisticated.
Yeah, well, they're English types. Breed. Yeah, they're English pigs. Yeah.
Wow, very posh.
Yeah, they're very cute actually when they're piglets.
That's our next T-shirt. It's a pig in a top hat and waistcoat.
The posh pig.
Yes, the posh pig.
And we went from the Berkshire Yorkshires, which are like the 300-pound monsters, and they eat grain primarily. It's literally called hog grower, their food. And we went from that to a grazing heritage breed pig, which is called the American guinea hog. We also have our boar is an Idaho pasture / Cooney mix, also a grazing breed. So we went from a big, fast-growing commercial breed to a smaller, slower-growing grazing pig. The idea being that because of supply line insecurities, because of cost, because of how much they grow and the rate they grow, it was more manageable for us to have, say, 180 or 200-pound pig versus a 300, 400, 500-pound pig. And also they graze. So they eat the grass, they eat all the vegetables, they, that's where they find their own food, and we don't have to do that for them.
Because before you had to get them grain.
Yes,
yourself.
and then bags and bags. So it starts off sort of reasonable, and then like a month before they're the size to butcher, the pig is going through like a 50-pound bag of grain in a week. One pig. So if you have more than one, it's hundreds of pounds of grain that they're eating. It's insane.
Gracious.
Yeah, and they don't stop
mattresses
growing.
For dessert.
Exactly. They don't stop growing either. So if we wanted to breed our own pigs. You'd have a sow, that could get up to 1,000 pounds. I think the world's largest pig is like about 1,800 pounds or something like that, something massive. They just keep growing and getting fatter, which is a safety concern. So our pigs are smaller because they're grazing, and because of that, we can breed them, and we are not worried about any sort of dangerous situations because of their size.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that you could use to keep the pigs in line, maybe, is the dogs. Talk about the relationship between the dogs and the pigs. It seems a little antagonistic to me. One time I thought the dogs were like setting upon the pig. How does that all shake out?
Our dogs are a little overly enthusiastic. They're German Shepherds, so they're historically not animal guarding dogs. I think German Shepherds are more like property and human guard dogs. But they do have that shepherding instinct, and they kind of like to please Hank or I. So if they see a pig that has kind of gone out of its pen or something, if we let them roam around or going a little far, they kind of chase it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so then the dogs do what?
They sort of circle it and are encouraging it to go back to where it was.
How do they encourage it, Maria?
They kind of nip at it and they'll bark, and they kind of, you can see sort of like the wolf instinct kick in, and they kind of circle the poor thing. But a pig has a very strong hide and a low center of gravity, and they're not afraid to just bully past the dogs too. So it's
a pretty even match. I mean, the dogs have to be pretty careful themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's move on to the processing point. So you do this yourself. And when we say process, that is a farm euphemism for butcher.
It is yes.
Yes.
The harvesting of pigs.
You do not outsource this, right? Or at least you did it first. Like, talk us through the change there.
Right. With our very first set of pigs, we did have someone with more experience, the local butcher that came and picked up our pigs and did it for us. This was because, we'd never butchered any sort of animal. I think Hank had done chickens before, but nothing, of this size or nature before. So we ended up deciding not to do that again, not because the local butcher was bad. They were actually very respectful and very patient with the animals and very gentle with them. But even then, like, a pig knows you, like you're the person that feeds them every day, and then all of a sudden, like, the stranger is carting them away. It's a very scary situation. And so there's sort of a motto, I think, of homesteading and people who raise their own animals, which is good life, good death, good chef. The idea of the phrase is that you give your whatever animal the best life it can have, and then the very worst moment of its life is its death, and that should be instantaneous. And then you, as a good chef, you will use all the parts of the animal and respect the sacrifice that it gave. And so we really want to take that to heart and process our own animals so that literally the moment they die, the instant they die, it's the worst moment in their life, and they don't know it. I actually considered being a vegetarian after we processed our first animals, because it was, it's a hard thing to do emotionally, and just like mentally too. But after we butchered our first set of animals, like, we haven't had to buy meat in 3 years, and it's excellent quality pork. It's the best pork you've ever had. People think it's beef when they eat it. So it's definitely been a life changer.
What do you do with the meats?
Well, we eat it,
Sure.
But
thanks. Moving along.
It's right. No, but there's a lot. And, people, I think when you think of pig or pork, people think of like pork chops and bacon, and that's about it. But that's only a very small percentage of what a pig is. And if you look at like old homestead sort of cookbooks, like they use the entire animal for everything. Like you render lard and cook with it just like you would with butter. Like you make head cheese and sausage and trotters and that sort of thing. Like we read before we butchered pigs for the first time, we read that chapter in Little House in the Big Woods where Pa and Uncle Henry butcher a pig and the kids like made a ball out of the bladder and they roasted the pigtail and that sort of thing. So we didn't go as far as making a ball out of the bladder, but like we had the kids involved. They wanted to see everything, and we talked. It was like an amazing science lesson because we talked about anatomy, we talked about animal husbandry, and then they also saw this really strong community effort because we had several neighbors come and help us, and we divided up the meat. We made sausage, we preserved it. It's sort of this central moment on a farm is a day when you harvest an animal because it's not just an animal died and you're going to eat it. It's a sustaining for your family, your friends, or the community in general, and a learning experience for everybody. It is very like old school harvest festival kind of mentality, where the entire neighborhood is there, or at least a large group getting involved with everything.
So we've talked about how, oh man, like so strong, so bulky, even the guinea size, right? They're strong little munchkins. This segment I'd like to call, but is it safe? Where we ask, how do the kids interact with the pigs? And is it safe?
Yeah. Well, okay. So with all animals, you do have to have a healthy respect for them and their temperaments and their difference in ability. Like even around chickens, like a rooster can do a lot to you if you're not careful.
Yes, I have fought with roosters myself.
Yeah.
You do not turn your back.
Right, exactly. So, and the same kind of goes with pigs. Even with our big commercial grade pigs, because we handle them on a daily basis, multiple times a day, they're pretty familiar with us. And also, we didn't have any intact males. So all of our males were castrated, or we just had females in terms of the big pigs. So there wasn't like the testosterone buildup that is what makes a rooster dangerous, or a bull, or other animals.
Due to just to spell it out, making them much more aggressive / territorial / violent.
Yeah. So our pigs weren't dangerous to us, but we were still careful around them. Like our kids would still go, like Porphyria, she was 3 when we had them. She'd just sit right next to them and feed them clover, even the big pigs. And she wasn't afraid, but we had to, keep an eye on her, make sure she wasn't like sticking her hand in their mouth or beyond their field of vision, because they're low to the ground. So if they can't see you, they're just going to walk right into you or over you or on you. So you have to be careful about that. Our current pigs are smaller, and we've had a couple of them we've had since they were born, because we're now breeding pigs. And so they know us very well. They're very familiar with us. And they're also very small. So I'm not worried about them.
How small?
We have 4 American guinea hogs and 1 boar, who is an IPP Kune. And he's about 8 months, but a little tiny thing. We picked pigs that don't get bigger than about 250 pounds.
So I like how, and this is the case for so many things on the farm, the answer to, but is it safe, is, well, yeah, I mean, if you know what you're doing and you look out.
Yes.
It's not a matter of like, well, yeah, couldn't hurt a fly. They can. You just got to know how to be around them.
I'm not as cautious around, or expect my children to be as cautious around the pigs as we are around, say, Cookie. That's a different kind of...
The cow with horns.
Yes, the cow. Well, also, and the size. She's just massive. Yes. So around her, we're much more observant, and we kind of, the phrase is, you keep your head on a swivel around her. Like, not because you expect her to be dangerous, but just to be respectful of her, what she's capable of. We're less so with the pigs. Like, my little ones go out with the slops, and they go right in the pen and they drop it off. But also, like, I know they're there, And, there's a timeline in my head of how long this chore should take. So, and they go together. They don't go by themselves.
Very nice. Okay. Well, any final porcine thoughts to leave us with?
I had one, but now I don't remember what it was.
Oh, it's a podcast. You can take your time.
Oh, well, so pigs are very, pigs are what made us feel like we were farmers. I feel like the thing you do when you get an animal is you automatically sort of feel like you've reached a next level of achievement. And now, we've leveled up again because we're breeding animals. Did you know that a pig's gestation period is 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days?
How symmetrical.
I know. It's pretty cool. So they can have litters twice a year and up to 12 to 16 piglets a year. So they're...
What?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. So our first one had 3. And so the first time they have a pig or piglets, it's difficult because you have to know if your sow is going to be a good mom, because they do tend to kill their children if they don't want to, or roll over on them because they're negligent. So that first set of pigs we had to, keep an eye on her and make sure she was a good mom. And thankfully, Peaches, which is the name of the mama pig, she's a very attentive mother. And so she kept her piglets alive and well cared for and thriving.
Well, fantastic. I hope that answers everybody's porcine questions. And Maria, if the people out there do have questions, comments, feedback for the show, is there an email address that they can write?
Oh, yeah.
No?
Well, you can email us at silvergoosefamily@gmail.com, or you can contact us through our website, silvergoosefamilyfarm.com. And I'm always happy to respond to anybody who has questions or comments.
Great. Okay. Well, while we wait for all the people to inquire about how they can start raising pigs, thank you for sharing these fun facts. Thank you for being on your own show.
Thank you for being the only reason why I make podcast episodes.
Happy to assist. Thank you all for listening. I look forward to being back here once again at some future time discussing some other fascinating farm situation.
There are many other animals.
Yes, we have only just begun. Truly. All right. That'll be all, and see you later.